Okay, continuing my short series on Christianity. Why is Christianity hated? Well, Christianity is hated not because of the ideas present within Christianity, but by the ideas present in Christians. Okay, because there's these strains of thought, these kind of like memes that have gone on through Christian culture, which have not really helped. And of course has caused a lot of psychological harm, and of course they've been priests who behave badly. You've got the charismatic evangelical extremists, you've got people using faith and faith-based ideas for political purposes and political gain. And there's all manner of headfuck associated with it. Some people would say, well, Christianity is, let's say, intrinsically homophobic because of certain writings in certain parts of the Old Testament or certain writings in certain parts of the New Testament. But that's not necessarily part of what Christianity is about. Why is that the case? Because those things were written a long time ago, and we're not living in the ancient world. We're living in this century, in this era, when things are different, so what we can do is try and find the ideas which are important and throw away the ideas which are a bit old-fashioned and came out of the prejudices and the personal issues of the writers of, let's say, the Old and New Testament in this particular case. Even Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament, had things in his writings which pointed out the fact that he recognized that he had character flaws and personality defects, and those character flaws and personality defects and prejudices came out in his writing. So for the people who say that, oh yeah, here we go, the Bible is like, you know, the way, the truth and the life, this is the Word of God. Yes, this, no, fuck off. It's the word of people who had some kind of, in the case of Paul, it seems like he had some peculiar personal experiences. He had attributed them to a certain particular something or other. He struggled to understand what that was. He came from a history of persecuting people, and all this, like, you know, we've got to persecute people kind of like thinking was still present with him at the time when he was writing, or, you know, various different parts of what we now have here translated into English. Of course, there are plenty of factual inaccuracies. Even the name of the alleged Son of God, Jesus himself, was not Jesus, because the word Jesus was a bastardization of another word from another language, which was a bastardization of another word from another language, which probably originally came from the word Joshua, which is a little bit more kind of like normal, so to speak. So, plenty of issues here, plenty of issues of misunderstanding. Modern research suggests that the adopted father of Jesus was not actually a carpenter. He could have been a stonemason, which is something that may even make the Freemasons feel a bit more proud of themselves, and will make those who follow the idea that Jesus was the son of a carpenter, or was a carpenter himself, probably feel a little bit inadequate. So there's plenty of issues with what is written here, and because of that we have to look at this from a different point of view. Not this is the way, the truth and the life, we must do as it says, but to look into it, find things which are symbolically beneficial, either to do with an individual and their own higher power concept, as I've already made an allusion in my previous video that practically everyone has some kind of higher power concept, they just don't quite have some kind of like fixed rigid definition for it. Some people it's spirit of the universe, some people it's JC, for some people it's this, that and the other. But the concepts within this has been influenced by the authors. So you look out for the symbols which are useful, you look out for the words which are useful, and that which is basically pretty bloody stupid we have to get rid of. Within the UK these days there's this thing called I think it's called the Quilliam Society, which deals with the subject of Islam, and points out that there's things in Islam which essentially we shouldn't really have because they are just plain wrong, and so we get rid of them. Okay, 21st century thinking applied to an ancient religion. We're in the 21st century, we're all educated people, at least we should be, and if we shouldn't, you're on YouTube, so you can get some education and you can start finding things out and start working out why people broadcast on YouTube in various different ways, what they're trying to do to you and to your head, and try and think through that so they don't affect you quite so much. during a time when there was like the big, you know, battle between the atheists and the theists here on YouTube, there was plenty of talk of logical fallacies. And if you spend a bit of time going back through ancient history to try and find the videos on the subject of logical fallacies, you'll be able to find out where arguments can go right, where they can go wrong. And you can use that to criticize literalism. And when literalism is got rid of, you're left with the idea of individual spirituality. The character of Jesus at the time when he was around was very much all about individuals developing a spirituality that was not based upon a central place of worship. And it was much more to do with the individual, the family, and standing up for what you think is right. And that's pretty much all that there is to say about it. Everything else is to do with you as an individual performing the mind-altering exercises of faith, including meditation, prayer if you want to do it, and of course studying the text and intellectualizing and applying that in a self-developmental way to try and help you to grow and to develop. So chill out and be at peace. Why is it that Christians are hated? Because there's so many Christians who are terrified, and as a result of fear, they act like assholes. Fear creates bigotry, it creates racism, it creates homophobia, it creates a desire to attack other people because they're different or because of, you know, whatever reason. You know, it's just fear is present, and some people don't actually try and deal with their fear issues. Instead, what they do is they immerse themselves in their fear and they enjoy it. And strangely enough, there's passages within the Bible which says that you shouldn't actually do that. So all of these extreme fundamentalist, keyboard playing, guitar playing, praise Jesus, fundamentalist extremists are going against the book which they regard as being the Word of God, which, as I've already pointed out, it isn't. Okay? So let's just try and get some perspective about the whole thing. It's not this whole massive ideology that's there to do nasty things to people who are homosexual, but there are Christians who have a hell of a lot of issues, and unfortunately they use the label of Christian to go and do those unpleasant things as if it was the label that was doing it, rather than them as twisted individuals who have problems. So, Chillax, basically, the guy that's mentioned in the New Testament, he was basically a long-haired, chill-out hippie who wanted people to have their own spirituality, to try and do what was right. He recognized that rigidly written down laws didn't always help people if they were forced to obey them, because people didn't, okay? And so therefore the attitude to all of those laws is you should use them as a tool of contemplation to work out where you're going wrong as a person. That was what he was talking about. Alright, it's not a question of, it's in the Word of God, you gotta do as you're told. No, our souls do that. Our souls talk like that, okay? Stupid people talk like that. So, remember to breathe, everybody. Remember to breathe. Everything is cool.